The Sotheby's crew enters 53 Rue de Monceau on a Wednesday morning in December 2018. Paris winter light falls flat through tall windows. The Haussmannian mansion opens directly onto Parc Monceau, where bare plane trees stand like anatomical diagrams against grey sky. Inside a Louis XV bergère positioned as if someone will return this afternoon. An Odilon-Redon dreamscape on silk-papered walls, all interior darkness. No figures, just the colour of thinking alone. A Fabergé egg catching pale sun. On a console near the door, a Cartier frame, gold and guilloché enamel, engraved 1934 Marjorie Post Davis. Every chair faces the direction someone chose. Every painting hangs at the height someone preferred. Every object sits exactly where it was placed. Nothing has moved in 12 years. The owner was Eleanor Post-Close Barzin, granddaughter of the grape nuts magnate, daughter of the woman who built Mar-a-Lago, that 126-room Florida palace, where the entire Ringling Brothers Circus once performed on the lawn after dinner. Eleanor died here November 27, 2006, age 96. Her son, Antal, kept the apartment unchanged, didn't shift a single bonnet, didn't rearrange one chair until his own death April 16, 2015, age 71. Granddaughter Laetitia waited 3 more years, then called the auction house. In 48 hours, strangers will own 60 years of choices. The apartment that refused to empty will finally release its contents. And the question that brought Eleanor here in 1954, the question she answered by never leaving, will scatter across continents with the furniture. What inheritance is worth abandoning for half a century? Chapter 1. The apartment that refused to empty. The catalogue says an American dynasty in Europe. The Eleanor Post-Close and Antal Post de Becquessy collections. December 19th and 20th, 2018. 2 days to sell 60 years. The crew moves through rooms photographing provenance. 18th century French furniture, not Louis XIV with his Sun King excess, but Louis XV and XVI, when aristocracy valued refinement over conquest. Not the big impressionists either. No Monet haystacks, no Renoir dance halls. Odilon-Redon's dreamscapes instead. Pierre Bonnard's domestic light. Édouard Vuillard's bourgeois interiors. The introverts of Impressionism. Painters who worked inward, not outward. Someone built this collection piece by piece. Someone who chose quiet over grand, private over public, craft over provenance. Context arrives through murmured research between specialists. Eleanor's mother was Marjorie Merriweather Post, that Marjorie Post, who built Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, the 126-room palace that cost $7 million in 1927, roughly $127 million today. The estate that required 60 full-time staff just to function, 30 running the household, 30 maintaining the grounds, 20 gardeners alone working year-round. When Marjorie died in 1973, she left Mar-a-Lago to the United States government, hoping it would become a winter White House. She established a trust $259,512 annually for maintenance. Actual cost $1 million per year. The shortfall $740,488 someone would have to cover. She offered it to her 3 daughters first. All 3 said no. Eleanor was one of those daughters, the one who moved to Paris permanently in the mid-1950s and never came back. Not for her mother's funeral, not when presidents visited the empty mansion, not when demolition permits were approved in 1985. 52 years in this apartment on Rue de Monceau. This space she chose while the palace she was born to inherit sat empty, then changed hands, then became something else entirely. The Sotheby's specialists keep working. They measure frames. They photograph maker's marks on furniture undersides. They catalogue every Fabergé egg, every sculpture, every decorative box. The apartment yields its contents reluctantly, room by room. But what it won't yield, what 12 years of stillness protected, is the answer to why someone would abandon a palace for an apartment, why someone would choose Paris over Palm Beach, small over grand, invisibility over legacy. Why Eleanor Post? Close. Barzin spent half a century 3,000 miles from her inheritance, building something entirely separate from the empire her mother built. The crew will auction the furniture. Strangers will buy the paintings. The apartment itself will be sold to new owners who won't know Eleanor's name. But the question that brought her here in 1954, the question she answered by never leaving, that won't sell. That will scatter with the collection and disappear. Can you build an identity by refusing an inheritance? Can you become someone by choosing not to be who you were born to be? December 19. 10. The auction begins. 60 years of choices become line items in a catalogue. An American dynasty in Europe. Dispersing. Chapter 2. The Second Daughter. Go back to the beginning. December 3rd, 1909. Greenwich, Connecticut. A fieldstone mansion called The Boulders, 11 bedrooms. Wedding gift from Eleanor's grandfather. C. Post, founder of Postham Cereal Company. Eleanor Post Close arrives the year after her sister Adelaide, second daughter to Edward Bennett Close, an alcoholic lawyer with no interest in running a cereal empire, and Marjorie Merriweather Post, age 22, already attending board meetings with her father, already learning the business her daughters will never be offered. This is where it starts, not with choice, but with sequence. First daughter, then second daughter. Then the watching begins. 1912. Eleanor, age 3. Her grandmother Ella dies. The first absence. May 9th, 1914. Eleanor, age 4. Her grandfather takes his own life in Santa Barbara, California. C. Post has chronic pain. He's convinced it means terminal illness. He leaves $20 million to his only child, Marjorie, age 27. The entire Postham Cereal Company passes to Eleanor's mother overnight. Marjorie becomes the wealthiest woman in America, while Eleanor is learning to read. There's a legal battle with the stepmother, Layla Young Post, over the estate. Eleanor watches her mother transform in courtroom corridors from housewife to tycoon, from someone's daughter to someone's adversary. This is the first lesson money changes who you are, or reveals who you were. November 1919. Eleanor, age 10. Her parents divorce. Edward Close remarries within months, Elizabeth Taliaferro, who will give him the sons he wanted. Twin boys. One of them, William Taliaferro Close, will father the actress Glenn Close. Eleanor will never meet this half-niece. The family tree branches, and she's already on a different limb. July 20th, 1920. Eleanor, age 10. Her mother marries Edward Francis Hutton, Wall Street stockbroker. Eleanor stops being Eleanor Close. Becomes Eleanor Post Hutton, a surname assembled from other people's marriages, other people's choices, other people's money. She is 11 years old, and she has already had 2 names. She will have 8 more before she finds one that sticks. 1921. Eleanor, age 12. Her trust fund receives $1,364,290. Adelaide gets the same amount. They are millionaires who cannot access lunch money without permission. The trust documents say the funds will be controlled by trustees, meaning their mother until they reach age 21. Here is what Eleanor learns at the Boulders. You can inherit wealth you cannot touch. You can be legally rich and functionally powerless. Your name will change when your mother remarries, but the company your grandfather built will keep its name forever. Posthum Cereal Company doesn't become Hutton Cereal Company. Only the daughters change names. Only the women absorb other people's identities. December 1923. Eleanor, age 14. Her mother gives birth to Nadania Marjorie Hutton, who will grow up to become the actress Dina Merrill. Eleanor is sent to boarding school. The family portrait redraws itself mother with new husband and baby daughter. Adelaide and Eleanor become relics from Marjorie's failed first marriage, the children from before. At 14, Eleanor has lived as Close for 11 years and post-Hutton for 3. She has watched her mother bury a father, divorce a husband, remarry, and start over. She has watched her own name get replaced like furniture. What does it mean to be second daughter? It means watching first daughter watch mother. 2 generations of observation, 0 participation. It means learning that women's identities are contingent, constructed from marriages and inheritances, assembled from pieces of other people's lives. Eleanor learns early names are not yours. They are loaned. Attachment is temporary. Identity is something that happens to you, not something you control. She is 14 years old, and she has already started disappearing. Chapter 3. The Debutante Factory. Ages 11 to 18. Eleanor shuttles between Spence School in Manhattan and Miss Porter's school in Farmington, Connecticut. Elite education for girls of a certain class. At Spence, her classmates include future Vanderbilts, Whitney's girls whose last names are buildings, museums, foundations. At Miss Porter's, Astors, Rockefellers, daughters of American dynasties. The curriculum is not education, it's preparation. Conversational French, the accent matters more than what you say. Posture, how to sit, how to stand, how to enter a room without drawing attention, how to leave a room without being forgotten, how to manage servants you will never hire yourself because your husband's wealth will hire them for you. Nothing useful. Nothing operational. They call it finishing school because it finishes any ambition beyond marriage. Meanwhile, 70 blocks south, Eleanor's mother sits in boardrooms. 1925. Marjorie acquires Jello Company. 1928. Maxwell House, coffee. 1929. She dines aboard her yacht, the Hussar, on flash-frozen turkey prepared by inventor Clarence Birdseye. The food is perfect, no ice crystals, no texture loss. She purchases his patents immediately. The frozen food industry is born in a yacht dining room, while Eleanor learns needlepoint in Connecticut. By the time Eleanor makes her society debut, Posthum Cereal has become General Foods Corporation, one of the largest food empires in America. Mother sits in boardrooms. Daughters sit in finishing schools. 1927. Eleanor, age 18. Her official society debut. She is formally presented as available for marriage. 1928. Eleanor, age 19. She is presented to King George V and Queen Mary at Buckingham Palace. This is the purpose of 18 years of education, to stand in a British palace wearing a dress that costs more than most American families earn in a year, to curtsy correctly, to say nothing meaningful, to be looked at and approved. Adelaide did this. Nadenia will do it in 13 years. 3 daughters of the wealthiest woman in America, trained exclusively for ornamental display. Eleanor graduates with perfect French, impeccable posture, and no conception of what she's for, except attachment. She can discuss Proust in his native language, but she cannot read a balance sheet. She can manage a 12-course formal dinner, but she cannot make a business decision. She has been educated to be decorative. In 8 months, she will elope with a broke playwright, borrowing $7 for the ceremony because she cannot access millions in her trust fund without her mother's signature. The debutante factory produces exactly what it promises: women prepared to marry well, but not to do anything else. Can you build a self from posture lessons and French conjugations? Can you become someone when you're trained, only to be beside someone? Eleanor will try to answer this question 5 times in 12 years through 5 different marriages, 5 attempts to find identity through attachment, 5 surnames, 5 failures. But that comes later. First, the elopement. First, the 7 borrowed dollars. First, the marriage that was never legally a marriage at all. Chapter 4. $7.06 Weddings. April the 12th, 1930. Eleanor Post Hutton, age 20, elopes with Preston Sturgis, playwright, age 31. The numbers tell the story. Preston's play Strictly Dishonorable ran 16 months on Broadway, starting in September 1929. Earned him over $300,000, roughly $5 million today. He took every penny and invested it in 3 new plays. All 3 failed. By April 1930, he's broke. Eleanor technically has millions. Her trust received $1,364,290 when she was 12, but she can't access it until December 3rd, her 21st birthday, 8 months away. Her mother fiercely opposes the marriage. Total cost of the elopement $7, borrowed from Preston's mother, who goes by Madame Desti Cosmetics Entrepreneur, former intimate of dancer Isadora Duncan, Justice of the Peace in Bedford Hills, New York, honeymoon at Madame Desti's bungalow in Woodstock, in the Catskills, $7 for a wedding when the bride will inherit millions in 8 months. This is the gap between legal wealth and actual access. This is what trust fund control looks like from inside. The marriage lasts 2.5 years in legal limbo. May 1932. Eleanor discovers something. Preston's first wife was Estelle Mudge Godfrey, a 22-year-old heiress who just divorced a 77-year-old millionaire when Preston married her in 1923. They divorced in 1928. Or rather, Estelle obtained a Mexican divorce in 1928. Mexican divorces weren't recognized in New York. Eleanor has been unknowingly living in a bigamous marriage for 25 months. November 3rd, 1932. The annulment is granted by referee John M. Tierney, who declares Preston's Mexican divorce not worth a last year's bird nest. Exact quote from the court transcript. The marriage is void ab initio, never existed legally, even while Eleanor was living it. Meanwhile, Preston is selling his new screenplay to Fox Studios. It's called The Power and the Glory, starring Spencer Tracy, and it's loosely based on her stories about her grandfather, C. Post. He's extracting material from her family history stories she told him during the marriage that never was, and selling it while the annulment paperwork moves through Manhattan courts. He profits from her inheritance while their marriage dissolves as legal fiction. December 3rd, 1930. During the marriage that isn't a marriage, Eleanor turns 21, gains full possession of her trust. The documents say millions of dollars, but the exact amount is never recorded. Too late to pay for the $7 wedding. Too late to matter for the marriage that's already failing without either of them knowing it's not legal. 5 months after the annulment is final, Eleanor remarries. April 5th, 1933. Etienne Gautier, French polo player, in Paris. The marriage dissolves within months. No documented divorce date, just the fact of its ending. June 4th, 1934, George Curtis Rand, lawyer. Donald Deskey designs their Manhattan apartment, Art Deco sophistication. Now in the Cooper Hewitt collection, the only architectural trace Eleanor leaves in America. February the 24th, 1938, divorce granted on grounds of cruelty. 4 years, 3 marriages in 8 years, 3 surnames in addition to the 2 she was born with. She is 28 years old, and she has been close. Post-Hutton, Sturgis, Gautier, and Rand. She will add 3 more names before she finds one that lasts. April 23rd, 1942, Janos Bekesi, who writes under the name Hans Haber. This one is different. Janos was born February 12, 1911, in Budapest. Son of a newspaper publisher. Jewish family, converted to Protestantism. After World War I, the family moved to Vienna. Janos became a journalist at 20 youngest chief editor in Europe. He exposed Adolf Hitler's family name in print Schicklgruber. His books were banned and burned after the Anschluss in 1938. He fled to France, joined the French Foreign Legion, rose to sergeant, June 22, 1940, captured by Nazi forces, imprisoned at Dieu's transit camp near Paris. He escaped with help from French resistance, made it to Lisbon, sailed to America. 1941 U.S. citizenship. His memoir, 1,000 Shall Fall, about his French Foreign Legion service, his capture, his escape, sold over 3 million copies. Eleanor marries him 7 weeks after Pearl Harbor. April 1942. He's drafted into the U.S. Army within months, trained in psychological warfare at Camp Ritchie. Maryland, the famous Ritchie Boys, deployed to North Africa, March 1943. Participated in Operation Avalanche, the Allied invasion of Italy. Later, he helped rebuild the German Free Press in occupied zones, established 12 newspapers, some still publishing today. 1944, their son is born, Antal Miklos Post de Bekesi. The middle name means Nicholas in Hungarian. The godmother, Eleanor Roosevelt. The former First Lady agrees to be godmother to the child of a serial heiress and a refugee novelist. This detail is documented but never explained in any archive. Why would Eleanor Roosevelt take on this role? What did it signal about the marriage, about Janos, about what Eleanor was trying to become? It signals that this marriage was different, not a society match, not a polo player or a lawyer from the right family. A refugee intellectual, a war hero, someone who escaped death and rebuilt himself in a new language. 1946 divorce, the only marriage that produced a child, the only one with Eleanor Roosevelt's blessing, still fails. Janos will marry 3 more times eventually, 6 marriages total, matching Eleanor's count. But from this marriage, one lasting thing, Antal, who will grow up to mirror his mother's exile, who will become director and advisor to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, who will keep his mother's Paris apartment unchanged for 9 years after her death. August 27, 1949. Owen Dennis de Lagarde Johnson, son of novelist Owen Johnson, working at the American Embassy in Paris, divorced early 1950s, exact date undocumented, 5 marriages in 12 years, 6 surnames not counting the 2 from childhood. Eleanor is 40 years old, and she has tried attachment as identity 5 times. All 5 failed. September 1954, Léon Barzen, Belgian-born conductor, founder of the National Orchestral Association, founding musical director of New York City Ballet, working with George Balanchine and Lincoln Kirstein, He's 55. She's 44. This marriage will last 45 years until his death in 1999. What changed? She stopped searching for identity through attachment. She tried geography instead. Immediately after the wedding, they moved to Paris permanently. They acquired the mansion at 53 Rue de Monceau, the Haussmannian building opening onto Parc Monceau. They also maintain a residence in Fribourg, Switzerland, 6 marriages, 6 surnames added to Close and post-Hutton, Sturgis, Gautier, Rand, Hub, Johnson, Barzin. Only the last one sticks. Only the 4th one produced Antol, who becomes her companion in the exile she's about to choose. Can you find yourself through someone else's name? Can identity be constructed through marriage? Eleanor tried 5 times, in 19 years. 5 times. The mechanism failed. The 6th time, she changed the mechanism. She didn't look for identity in the husband. She looked for it in the distance from everything she'd been born into. Paris, 3,000 miles from Greenwich, 3,000 miles from Mar-a-Lago, 3,000 miles from being Eleanor Post Hutton, which is what the newspapers will call her for the rest of her life, even though she stopped using that name in 1954. Chapter 5. The Paris Question, September 1954. Eleanor Post Barzin, as she now calls herself. Though almost no one else will relocate permanently to Paris after marrying Léon. She is 44 years old. She has tried 5 times to build identity through marriage. Now she tries geography. 53 Rue de Monceau becomes the anchor. 8th arrondissement. Haussmannian architecture built during Napoleon III's redesign of Paris in the 1850s and 60s. When Georges Eugène Haussmann tore down medieval streets and built wide boulevards, uniform creamstone buildings with iron balconies, private mansions with interior courtyards, the building opens directly onto Parc Monceau. Eleanor can walk from her door into controlled green space without crossing a street. No traffic, no unplanned encounters. The park is landscaped, designed nature, not wild nature. 18th century follies and columns scattered among the trees. It's the kind of park where aristocrats once strolled to be seen strolling. Now it's where Eleanor can walk without being seen at all. The 8th arrondissement is where the Rothschilds lived, where the Heiress family built their banking fortune. Respectable, private, European, not American. She starts collecting, but not the way her mother collected. Marjorie's collections, visible today at Hillwood Museum in Washington, were built for display. Imperial Russian art Fabergé eggs, Romanov, China, Orthodox icons, porcelain with double-headed eagles. She bought these pieces in Moscow from 1936 to 1938, during and around her 3rd husband, Joseph E. Davis's service as U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union. Stalin's government was liquidating imperial art for hard currency. Marjorie had diplomatic access and insider prices. She purchased objects seized from aristocracy during the revolution. Her collection is a catalogue of other people's losses. Massive scale, statement pieces, each one chosen for provenance, owned by Catherine the Great. Used at Tsar Nicholas's coronation, more than intrinsic beauty. Eleanor collects differently. 18th century French furniture, not Louis XIV, the Sun King period. Versailles, excess, absolute monarchy, power made visible through gold leaf and scale. Louis XV and XVI instead. 1715 to 1792, periods when French aristocracy valued refinement over conquest, when they hosted philosophical salons, when they patronized Enlightenment thinkers. When they read Voltaire and Rousseau while sitting in chairs that emphasized craft, not grandeur, impressionist paintings, but not the ones that sell for record prices at auction, not Monet's haystacks, not Renoir's dance halls, Odilon Redon's symbolic dreamscapes, interior psychological landscapes, all color and mood, no figures. Pierre Bonnard's domestic intimacy light falling through windows onto breakfast tables, wives in bathrobes, private family moments. Edouard Vuillard's bourgeois interiors, middle-class rooms, patterned wallpaper, people reading quietly. The introverts of Impressionism, artists who painted what they felt, not what would sell. Sculptures by Jean-Baptiste Carpeau, Auguste Rodin, Rembrandt Bugatti, bronzes emphasizing motion and form. She builds this collection piece by piece over 50 years, walking Parisian galleries, attending auctions, buying what speaks to her. No diplomatic access, no Soviet fire sales, no insider prices, just an American expatriate building a collection that reflects her own taste, not her inheritance. The one piece that connects to her mother, a Cartier frame, gold and guilloche enamel, engraved 1934 Marjorie Post Davis. From her mother's third marriage, Eleanor keeps this, displays it in the Paris apartment. The message is clear. I acknowledge origin, but I built something entirely different. Her social circle forms and gets recorded in a guest book in the entrance hall. Count and Countess of Beaumont, Princess of Caraman-Chimay, Madame Léon Blum, wife of the former Prime Minister of France, Baron and Baroness Guy de Rothschild, the U.S. Ambassador and Madame Gavin, the Japanese Ambassador and Madame Kurukaki, renowned soloists Philippe Entremont, Arthur Grumiaux, Maurice Gendron, European aristocracy, diplomatic corps, musicians, not American socialites, not the Palm Beach set, not General Foods executives. These are people who know Eleanor as Madame Barzin, wife of the conductor, collector of French decorative arts, American expatriate who speaks perfect French and hosts elegant receptions. The mechanism she's discovered distance creates space for reinvention. Geographic remove lets her control who she is and who knows it. 3,000 miles from America. She's not Eleanor Post Hutton, granddaughter of the cereal magnate. She's just Eleanor, building a life through aesthetic choices. Her son Anatole, aged 10, when they moved to Paris in 1954, grows up in this world, educated at St. Paul's School, then Princeton, class of 1965. He doesn't pursue business, becomes an art collector. Later, director and advisor to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He absorbs his mother's mechanism, choose art over commerce, Europe over America, collection over display, close bond. They share the exile. Her mother visits occasionally, but on Eleanor's terms, in Eleanor's space. Speaking Eleanor's preferred language, French, European culture, art, the power dynamic inverts. Marjorie is guest in Eleanor's world now, not the other way around. For 19 years, 1954 to 1973, this works. Eleanor builds an identity separate from inheritance. She proves you can construct a self through geography and aesthetic choices. She is 44 when she moves to Paris. She is 63 when the mechanism gets tested. September 12, 1973. Marjorie Merriweather Post dies at Hillwood Estate, Washington, D.C., age 86. Eleanor receives word in Paris. Telegram or phone call. The documentation doesn't specify. Her mother's will bequeaths Mar-a-Lago to the U.S. government, hoping it will become a winter White House for presidents. But there's a trap. If the government refuses the property, It reverts to the Post Foundation, which the daughters must manage. The Post Foundation receives $259,512 annually for maintenance. The actual cost $1 million per year. Shortfall $740,488. Split 3 ways among daughters, roughly $250,000 each annually. To maintain a palace none of them will ever live in. Adelaide, age 65, stays in America, becomes Hillwood Foundation president, manages her mother's museum legacy until her own death in 1998. Nedaniah, known as Dinah Merrill, age 50, continues her Hollywood career, uses the family name strategically for visibility. Eleanor, age 63, in Paris. All 3 decline the Mar-a-Lago inheritance. This is the moment of forced confrontation. Eleanor could return to America, attend her mother's funeral at Hillwood, participate in estate settlement meetings, sit on Post Foundation boards, be present for family grief and decision-making, claim a role in her mother's legacy. Or she could stay in Paris. If she returns, she collapses back into daughter of Marjorie Post. 19 years of geographic identity building dissolves. She becomes again what she was born to be. If she stays, she cements the separation, makes it permanent, proves that the Paris identity isn't temporary escape, but permanent transformation. She stays. No documentation exists of Eleanor attending her mother's funeral in September 1973. No evidence of return to America for estate settlement. No record of presence at family gatherings. She stays in Paris, and stays, and stays. 33 more years. 1973 to 2006. Never returns to America. Not when presidents visit the empty Mar-a-Lago. Not when it's offered back to the Post Foundation. Not when demolition permits are approved. Not when it's sold. Not for Adelaide's funeral in 1998. The mechanism that freed her now constrains her. She cannot return without destroying what she built. The success of displacement becomes its own rigidity. 1999. Léon Barzin dies after 45 years of marriage. Eleanor is 89, widowed. Anatole, age 55, becomes primary companion. They maintain the apartment exactly as it's always been. Collection continues growing. Neither death mothers in 73, husbands in 99 changes the pattern. November 27, 2006. Eleanor dies in the Paris apartment, age 96. Anatole inherits more than the collection. He inherits the mechanism. He keeps the apartment unchanged for 9 years until his own death, April 16, 2015. Every chair faces the direction his mother chose. Every painting hangs at the height she preferred. He freezes the aesthetic environment, controls through stasis, refuses to negotiate with time or loss. Mother and son both exiles, both collectors, both using distance and aesthetic choice to construct identities separate from American inheritance. The cost of success. When they die, there's no institutional anchor, no museum, no foundation, no building with Eleanor's name, just Sotheby's, preparing to auction 60 years of choices to strangers who won't know who Eleanor Post Barzin was. Can you build a self through geography? Can you become someone by choosing distance? Eleanor proved you can. For 52 years, it worked. But the price of complete separation is complete erasure. No legacy, no permanence, just an apartment that refused to empty for 12 years, then finally surrendered its contents to the market. Chapter 6. The Inheritance Trap. September 12, 1973, afternoon. When Marjorie Merriweather Post dies at Hillwood, 60 full-time employees are working at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, 30 managing the household cooks, footmen, chambermaids, chauffeurs, 30 maintaining the grounds, 20-plus year-round gardeners alone, plus groundskeepers, pool maintenance, security. Annual cost $1 million. Marjorie's Post Foundation endowment, $259,512 annually. Coverage 26%. This is the instant Mar-a-Lago transforms from asset to burden. Before this moment, it's Marjorie's achievement, maintained at her expense, her responsibility. After, it's an orphaned palace that costs more than anyone wants to pay. Marjorie's will bequeaths the property to the United States government as a winter White House. The government accepts legally obligated by bequest terms. Immediate problems become apparent. 1974. President Richard Nixon visits the property once. He already maintains a winter retreat at Key Biscayne, Florida. Doesn't need a second property requiring $1 million annual budget and 60-person staff. Never returns. 1977 to 1981. The Carter administration evaluates Mar-a-Lago for presidential use. Security assessment. The estate sits 2 miles from West Palm Beach Airport's main runway. Impossible to secure airspace for a president. Every commercial flight would need rerouting. Financial assessment. Cannot justify $1 million annually to taxpayers during an energy crisis and double-digit inflation. Practical assessment. 126 rooms designed for 1920s, entertaining gold leaf ceilings. Venetian glass. Formal ballrooms useless for modern presidential operations. Presidents need offices, situation rooms, staff quarters. Mar-a-Lago was built for parties, not governance. Conclusion. No president actually wants it. December 1980. Congress votes via special act to return the property to the Post Foundation. 8 years of government ownership. 1 presidential visit. What happened to the 60 staff members? No documentation exists. No oral histories. No interviews in local West Palm Beach newspapers. No worker testimonials. Likely sequence most dismissed when the government took possession in 1973, because the government didn't use the property. A skeleton crew maintained the empty building, maybe 5 to 10 people, while it sat vacant. The 30 household staff jobs eliminated immediately. The 20-plus gardeners reduced to minimal maintenance crew. 60 families whose livelihoods depended on Marjorie Post's vision. When she died and her daughters declined the inheritance, those jobs vanished. No severance documented. No retirement packages noted. Just the silence of working-class lives disrupted, because 3 wealthy women chose freedom over obligation. The palace becomes a tomb. 126 rooms. No occupants. Gardens declining. The grand vision becoming expensive liability. 1981. The Post Foundation receives the property back. Board includes Adelaide Close, Riggs Eleanor's sister, now Hillwood Foundation president. Immediate crisis still costs $1 million annually to maintain. Foundation income $259,512 from the endowment. Shortfall $740,488 per year. The foundation cannot fundraise enough. Nobody wants to donate to maintain someone else's private palace. They list the property for sale. Asking price $20 million. No buyers for 4 years. Why zoning residential only? Cannot convert to hotel or commercial development. Maintenance $1 million annually ongoing, plus the $20 million purchase price. Obsolescence 126 rooms built for a lifestyle requiring 50 servants. Useless for a modern single family. Who needs 58 bedrooms, Tax burden. Florida property taxes on a 17-acre ocean-to-lake estate. Historical designation. National Historic Landmark status granted in 1980. Cannot demolish or significantly alter the structure. Nobody rich enough to afford it also wants to pay $1 million per year to maintain something they didn't build. That doesn't suit contemporary life. That screams 1920s excess. The daughter's refusal looks prescient. They understood something buyers are learning. This palace is a financial trap, disguised as an inheritance. By 1985, the Post Foundation authorizes demolition permits. Better to tear it down and sell vacant land than continue losing money, maintaining an unsellable mansion. At the last moment, Donald Trump makes an offer, purchases the property for $5 million, acquires the furnishings separately for $3 million, total approximately $8 million. Various sources report $5 to $10 million in total cost. The foundation accepts because the alternative is demolition and total loss. From the perspective of the 60 workers, they worked for Marjorie Post, some for decades. Year-round employment in Palm Beach stable. Middle-class jobs in a seasonal tourism economy. When she died, they likely assumed Dina, who lived at Mar-a-Lago with her mother, would continue operations. Instead, the property transferred to a government that didn't use it. Jobs disappeared. 8 years of uncertainty. Property returned to foundation. Brief hope of reopening. Listed for sale, everyone knows what this means. Nearly demolished. Finally sold to new owner with completely different operation. No obligation to rehire existing staff. No continuity. Just displacement. This is the hidden cost of inheritance refusal, not just property abandoned, but working-class livelihoods disrupted because 3 heiresses chose personal freedom over inherited obligation. The irony cuts deep. Marjorie built Mar-a-Lago partly to provide Depression-era employment. Construction employed 600 workers continuously from 1924 to 1927. She fed them, paid them when other jobs vanished. Built during the 1920s boom, completed just before the crash. She intended the estate as a gift to the nation, a symbol of private wealth serving public good, a winter White House where presidents could work in beauty. Instead, it becomes the burden no one wants. Not her daughters, not the government, not the foundation bearing her name, not even preservation societies. Beauty at this scale only functions when the original builder pays the costs. After the builder dies, beauty becomes liability. 3 daughters face the same math inherit a palace, requiring $250,000 annually from each of them to maintain, or refuse, walk away. Let someone else solve it. They refused. The palace sat empty. Gardens declined. Staff lost jobs. Eventually, it sold for $8 million less than half the asking price, a fraction of what Marjorie spent building it. The vision died with the visionary. What remains is just a building expensive, impractical, obsolete, waiting for someone willing to pay the costs of someone else's dream. Chapter 7. The Collection. As quiet resistance. After her mother's death in 1973, Eleanor is 63. She's been in Paris 19 years. She will stay 33 more, never returning to America. Not for Adelaide's funeral in 1998. Not once. She continues building the collection, but now without needing to prove anything. The contrast between mother and daughter becomes visible in their collections. Marjorie's collections are preserved today at Hillwood Museum in Washington. D.C. 25 acres, 36 rooms. Visitors tour the Russian imperial art, French decorative pieces, orchid greenhouse. This is what Marjorie built for permanence. The Russian art acquired in Moscow from 1936 to 38, while her third husband, Joseph E. Davies, served as United States ambassador to the Soviet Union. Fabergé eggs, Romanov china, Orthodox icons, imperial porcelain seized from Russian aristocracy during the revolution, liquidated by Stalin's government for hard currency, diplomatic access, insider prices. She walked through Soviet museums and bought what had belonged to czars. Every object selected for provenance more than beauty. Owned by Catherine the Great. Used at Nicholas II's coronation. The history mattered more than the craft. Scale designed to impress. Statement pieces for estates with 128 rooms. Purpose public display from the beginning. Life magazine spreads. Museum status while Marjorie was living. Current status Hillwood operates today. Adelaide managed it as foundation president from 73 until her death in 98. Marjorie's name preserved permanently. Vision institutionalized. Eleanor's collection was different from the start. 18th century French furniture. Not Louis XIV, the Sun King. Versailles. Absolute monarchy. Louis XV and XVI instead. 1715 to 1792. Periods when French aristocracy valued refinement over power. When they patronized philosophical salons. When they read Voltaire and Rousseau. When intellectual sophistication mattered more than territorial conquest. Chairs with curved legs. Writing desks with marquetry inlay. Commodes with bronze mounts emphasizing craftsmanship. Furniture meant to be used, not merely displayed. Impressionist paintings, but not the ones that break auction records. Odilon Redon's symbolic dreamscapes, interior psychological landscapes, all color and atmosphere, the feeling of being alone with your thoughts. Pierre Bonnard's domestic intimacy light through windows onto breakfast tables, private family moments. Edouard Villard's bourgeois interiors, middle-class rooms with patterned wallpaper, people reading quietly, the beauty of ordinary life, the introverts of Impressionism, artists who painted inward, not outward, who painted what they felt, not what would sell, sculptures by Jean-Baptiste Carpeau, Auguste Rodin, Rembrandt Bugatti, every piece chosen for how it made Eleanor feel, not for whose hands had touched it before. No diplomatic access, no Soviet fire sales, just an American expatriate walking Parisian galleries for 50 years, attending auctions, building slowly, piece by piece, on personal taste, not investment strategy. The one piece connecting to her mother, the Cartier frame, engraved 1934 Marjorie Post Davis. Eleanor keeps this, displays it in the Paris apartment. The message is deliberate. I acknowledge where I came from. But look at everything else. Her son Anatole grows up in this aesthetic. Born 1944, Eleanor Roosevelt as godmother. Educated at St. Paul's School, Princeton, class of 65. He doesn't pursue business, becomes art collector, later director and advisor to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He shares his mother's exile. They curate together, collect together, sometimes live together in Paris. Close bond that mirrors her displacement. He never marries, never builds roots anywhere but in collections and museums, where Marjorie threw charity balls for publicity. Eleanor and Anatole give to institutions, quietly. Hillwood Museum, Metropolitan Museum, Belvedere Palace in Vienna. No naming rights. No press releases. No plaques reading Gift of Eleanor Post Barzin. Just quiet support. Different model of inherited wealth. Not building companies, not seeking recognition, supporting art, preserving beauty, funding scholarship anonymously. Sotheby's will later describe their philosophy. They continued the aesthetic and cultural heritage they inherited from their mother and grandmother, the extraordinary Marjorie Merriweather Post, but on their own terms in Paris. On their own terms, in Paris, not in America. 1999, Léon Barzin dies after 45 years of marriage. Eleanor is 89. Antal, age 55, becomes primary companion. They maintain the apartment exactly as always. Collection continues growing. November 27, 2006. Eleanor dies in the Paris apartment, age 96. Her body is buried at Woodlawn Cemetery, Bronx. Service held at Hillwood Estate. One final compromise. The body returns to America, though Eleanor never did. Antal inherits more than furniture. He inherits the mechanism. He keeps the apartment completely unchanged. Every chair faces the direction his mother chose. Every painting hangs at her preferred height. He freezes the aesthetic environment, controls through stasis, refuses to negotiate with time or loss. For 9 years, 2006 to 2015, the apartment is a museum of one life. April 16th, 2015, Antal dies, age 71, in the apartment frozen in time. Mother and son achieved complete aesthetic and geographic separation from American inheritance. They proved you can refuse what you're born into and create something entirely different. But the cost of success is institutional erasure. No museum bears Eleanor's name. No foundation continues her mission. No building houses her collection permanently. No institutional anchor preserves her choices beyond her death and her son's death. Just Sotheby's, preparing to disperse 60 years of aesthetic decisions to strangers. Compare the three sisters Adelaide, 1908 to 98, chose stewardship, became Hillwood Foundation president, managed museum until death at 90. Result, Hillwood operates today. Permanent legacy, but Adelaide's own aesthetic invisible, subsumed, her voice absorbed into Marjorie's. Dina Merrill, 1923 to 2017, chose performance, became actress, married Stanley Rumbaugh Jr., then Cliff Robertson. Films included Desk Set, Butterfield 8, The Player, died at 93 with documented career. IMDb page exists. Films viewable. Result visible success. But every article called her serial heiress. Could use fame. Couldn't escape origin. Eleanor, 1909 to 2006. Chose exile. Moved to Paris permanently at 44. Built separate collection over 52 years. Refused publicity. Never returned after 73. Died at 96 in apartment she chose over palace she was born to inherit. Outlived Adelaide by 8 years. Result, freedom, privacy, control, and complete invisibility. 3 daughters. Same inheritance burden. 3 strategies. Only Eleanor's required complete geographic exile. Only Eleanor's left no institutional trace. Only Eleanor's worked if the goal was separation rather than permanence. But when Antal dies and Letitia calls Sotheby's, the question becomes, did it work? Can you build a self that survives beyond institutional memory? December 19th, 2018. The auction will answer. Chapter 8. An American Dynasty in Europe. Wednesday, December 19th, 2018, 10 a.m., Sotheby's, Paris. The catalogue reads, An American Dynasty in Europe, the Eleanor Post-Close and Antal Post-de-Becquessy collections. 417 lots, 2 days of bidding, 60 years of Eleanor's choices, 1954 to 2006 plus 9 years of Antal's editions. Every piece now for sale. Granddaughter Laetitia Allen-Veer made the decision. After Antal died, April 2015, she waited 3 years. Let the apartment sit untouched. Total 12 years frozen since Eleanor's death. Then she called Sotheby's. What sells 18th century French furniture? Louis XV bergère with original gilding. Louis XVI consoles with marquetry inlay. Writing desks, commodes, side tables, all emphasizing craftsmanship over provenance. None owned by kings. Good furniture, not legendary furniture. Buyers, European collectors furnishing Haussmannian apartments. American decorators buying for tech entrepreneurs. Hedge fund managers. Asian collectors Shanghai. Hong Kong, where European furniture signifies cultivation. Impressionist paintings. Reedon's symbolic interiors. Bonnard's domestic light studies. Vuillard's middle-class intimacy. The quiet impressionists. 10,000 to 200,000 euros instead of 10 million. Less expensive than Monet. Equally significant to specialists. Buyers, private collectors recognizing undervalued masters. Smaller museums filling collection gaps. Investors betting on market correction. Fabergé objects. Not the famous imperial Easter eggs, but smaller examples. Frames, cigarette cases, enamel boxes. Buyers, Fabergé specialists. Russian oligarchs reclaiming pre-Soviet luxury. Collectors completing sets. The Cartier frame engraved 1934 Marjorie Post Davis. Eleanor's only physical connection to her mother. Estimate 20,000 to 30,000 euros. Buyer unknown. Not disclosed. Likely in private collection now where the connection to the Post dynasty is invisible. Meaningless. Just a Cartier frame. Beautiful. Expensive. Historically anonymous. Sculptures, bronzes, decorative arts scatter across continents, Paris to New York, to Tokyo to London. Eleanor's carefully curated contents now distributed randomly by market forces. What's not documented, the erasure. Total auction proceeds not released. Standard practice unless consignor requests disclosure. Laetitia wanted privacy. No record of how much Eleanor's 60-year collection realized. 10 million euros, 20 million, 50 million unknown. Individual lot prices beyond catalogue estimates. Actual hammer prices aren't widely reported. Public sees estimate, not final price, not buyer. Where major pieces went. Did the Metropolitan Museum acquire anything? Did Hillwood Museum purchase pieces to preserve connection? Documentation doesn't exist. Auction results show sold, but not destination. Not buyer identity. The apartment at 53 Rue de Monceau presumably sold after contents removed. No documentation of sale date, buyer, price. Privacy laws protect transactions. The space where Eleanor built her identity for 52 years now belongs to someone who likely doesn't know who she was. Media coverage, or lack thereof, American press minimal. Announcement in Antiques and The Arts Weekly, Art News. No New York Times feature on Eleanor's life. No Wall Street Journal retrospective. No Vanity Fair essay about three sisters' divergent paths. Just auction listing, professional coverage for professional audience, general public no awareness. French press, presumably Le Monde. Le Figaro covered it. Routine estate sale coverage. Collection d'une héritière américaine dispersée. Not treated as cultural moment. Just another Paris auction. City hosts dozens per year. Contrast with family properties, Mar-a-Lago, every action generates international headlines. Property constantly in news. Everyone knows the building. Marjorie's architectural achievement endures through visibility. Structure stands. Name recognition universal. Hillwood Museum regular arts coverage. Exhibition openings reviewed. Academic conferences hosted. Institution has public relations team. Media strategy. Educational mission. Marjorie's name preserved permanently through institutional infrastructure. Eleanor's collection disperses in near silence. 2 days, then gone. No retrospective, no catalogue raisonné, no museum exhibition titled Eleanor Post Barzin, an American in Paris. Just sale. Then invisibility. What persisted Hillwood Museum still operating? Annual visitors, professional staff, education programs, publications, digital archive. Adelaide ran foundation from 73 until death 98. Marjorie's name and vision permanent. Mar-a-Lago National Historic Landmark, designated 1980, operating as private club, 126 rooms, 17 acres, everyone knows it. Architectural permanence. What vanished Eleanor's collection completely dispersed. No museum wing, no gallery plaques reading Gift of Eleanor Post Barzin, no scholarship in her name. The collection that represented 52 years of building something separate from her mother's empire, scattered to buyers who probably don't know who Eleanor Post Barzin was. Eleanor's apartment sold, presumably. New owners who don't know the previous occupant spent half a century there. Space now just space. Anonymous real estate. Eleanor's name already forgotten except by auction specialists. No foundation, no scholarship fund, no building, just obituary in Washington Post, March 2007. And Sotheby's catalogue. That's the documentary record. 3 legacies. Adelaide's Legacy Hillwood Museum operates. Visitors tour. Students learn. Institution continues. Dina's Legacy films. Viewable on streaming platforms. IMDb page. Desk set. Butterfield 8. The Player. Hollywood career preserved. Eleanor's Legacy. Sotheby's catalogue. 2-day auction. Dispersal. The daughter who disappeared most successfully left least trace. This is what Eleanor wanted. Privacy, control, no public spectacle. She achieved it completely. Built a life on her exact terms for 52 years. Died in the space she chose. Never compromised. Never returned. Never explained. But the cost of perfect privacy is perfect invisibility. When you refuse to build institutions, you vanish when you die. Only institutional anchors preserve individual memory beyond one generation. Only buildings, foundations, endowments carry names forward. Eleanor chose freedom over permanence. The freedom worked. The impermanence worked too. She vanished completely, which proves she succeeded in refusing the inheritance. She built a private life, and private lives disappear. Chapter 9. The Daughter Who Disappeared. September 12, 1973. 3 daughters received news their mother died at Hillwood. All 3 face identical mathematics inherit Mar-a-Lago with $1 million annual obligation, or refuse. 3 strategies for the same burden Adelaide Brevoort. Close Riggs. Born 1908, died 1998. Age 65 when mother died. Strategy stewardship of family legacy. Choice became Hillwood Foundation president. Managed mother's museum until her own death at 90. Spent final 30 years 1973 to 98 preserving Marjorie's vision. Maintained the Russian Imperial Art Collection. Supervised the formal gardens. Ensured the estate remained intact. Oversaw programming, exhibitions, conservation, cost personal aesthetic subsumed into mother's. If Adelaide had her own taste separate from Marjorie's, it's invisible now. Her voice absorbed into institutional voice. She died having successfully extended her mother's legacy, but not having created Eleanor's alternative, not having built something separate, Result: Hillwood Museum operates today. Permanent institutional legacy achieved. Marjorie's name preserved. Collections intact. Gardens maintained. Foundation endowed. Success measured by what continues. Assessment chose duty over autonomy. Successful preservation, but self disappeared into service. Stewardship erased independent identity. Nedaniah Marjorie Hutton, known as Dina Merrill, born 1923, died 2017, age 50 when mother died. Strategy, public performance of American dream. Choice, sustained Hollywood career. Real talent, real achievement. Over 100 film and television credits across 6 decades. Married Stanley Rumbaugh Jr., Colgate toothpaste heir, 1946 to 66. Then Cliff Robertson, Academy Award-winning actor, 66 to 89. Active philanthropist, board member of multiple arts organizations. Society fixture photographed, interviewed, visible. Cost fame meant permanent association with mother's identity. Could never fully separate. Every article mentioned serial heiress. Every interview asked about Marjorie. Could use the name. Could leverage the fortune. Couldn't escape the origin story. Result: recognizable actress. Documented career IMDb page. Filmography. Preserved performances. Died at 93 with public recognition. Films still viewable. Legacy accessible. Assessment chose visibility. Successfully leveraged family name into independent achievement. Created real career requiring real skill, but remained tethered to dynasty. Performed it for public consumption. Visibility prevented complete autonomy. Created own achievements but never escaped origin. Eleanor Post, close Barzin. Born December 3rd, 1909. Died November 27th, 2006. Age 63 when mother died. Strategy, geographic exile, and aesthetic independence. Choice stayed in Paris. Never returned to America from 1973 to 2006. No documented United States visits in 33 years. Built separate collection. Refused publicity. Refused visibility. Refused to explain. Died in apartment she chose over palace she was born to inherit. Cost complete institutional erasure. Collection dispersed at auction. No museum. No foundation. No named building. No scholarship fund. Outlived Adelaide by 8 years, but died 11 years before Dinah. Left least institutional trace of 3 sisters. Result: freedom, privacy, control, self-determination. Life built entirely on own terms, and eventual invisibility. Assessment chose refusal. Most extreme strategy. Most successful at separation. Least successful at permanence, if permanence was the goal. Most successful at separation, if separation was the goal. Proved inheritance isn't destiny. Proved you can walk away completely. But cost of complete separation is complete erasure from public memory. The accumulated evidence tracks 5 pivot points where Eleanor's life could have gone differently. 1930 elopement. If she'd waited 8 months until 21st birthday. Accessed trust. Married with mother's blessing. Would have remained in American orbit. The $7 borrowed represents both desperation and rebellion. Necessity and choice. She chose defiance over patience. Chose elopement over approval. 1932 annulment. Marriage declared void ab initio. Never legally existed. Could have returned to mother's sphere. Admitted defeat. Accepted supervised life. Instead, remarried 5 months later to Etienne Gautier. Chose continued rebellion over surrender. Chose another attempt at attachment-based identity over retreat to family control. 1944. Antal's birth, Motherhood could have anchored her in America. Janos Haab was United States citizen. Anatol, born in Manhattan. Eleanor Roosevelt agreed to be godmother, signaling Eleanor was building American political and social connections. Instead, divorced Haab, 1946. Eventually, took son to Paris. Chose mobility over roots. Chose geographic flexibility over American stability. 1954, Paris relocation. Could have maintained American residence with extended European visits. Could have kept apartment in New York, house in Connecticut, villa in Palm Beach, collected properties like her mother did, and just spent time in Paris. Instead, permanent relocation. Chose complete geographic severance. Sold or abandoned American properties. Made Paris the only home. 1973 mother's death. Could have returned for funeral. Attended estate settlement meetings. Sat on post-foundation board. Been present for family grief and decision-making. Claimed role in mother's legacy. Instead, stayed in Paris. This is when the mechanism gets tested at maximum pressure. Return and collapse back into daughter of Marjorie Post, or stay and cement the separation permanently. She stayed and never reconsidered. 33 more years. No visits, no returns, no reconciliations. Each choice narrowed options but deepened commitment. By 1973, she'd invested 19 years in Paris identity. Returning would invalidate the entire project, would prove it was temporary escape, not permanent transformation. She stayed, proved it was permanent. Eleanor's strategy succeeded completely. So completely it erased her. She wanted 3 things: privacy, achieved, lived quietly, 52 years in apartment, few people visited, no magazine profiles, no society columns, no photographers, no interviews, no public life, complete privacy, control, achieved. Curated collection reflecting only her taste. No mother's influence, no husband's preferences, no dealer's recommendations overriding her judgment. Every object chosen because she wanted it. Complete aesthetic control. Life on her own terms. Achieved. Paris over Palm Beach. Small apartment over massive palace. Private collection over public museum. Quiet philanthropy over charity galas. European circle over American society. French language over English dominance. Complete self-determination. She got all 3. But the price of refusing public legacy is no legacy. When you don't build institutions, don't found museums, don't endow scholarships, don't donate collections with naming rights, don't create foundations, you vanish when you die. Only institutional anchors preserve individual memory beyond 1 generation. Only endowed buildings and foundations carry names forward into centuries you won't see. Her collection dispersed at Sotheby's. 2 days. December 2018. 60 years of choices scattered to strangers who don't know her name. Don't know who Eleanor Post Barzin was. Might buy a Reedon painting, a Louis XV chair, a Fabergé box, and never learn it was Eleanor's. Never know her story. Never connect object to person. Her apartment sold. Presumably. New owners living in space. Eleanor considered home for half a century. Space where she arranged furniture exactly as she wanted. Where she walked every morning. Where she entertained European friends. Where she built identity through aesthetic choice. Now someone else's home. Eleanor's presence erased when furniture removed, her name forgotten, except by specialists researching Post family for auction catalogues. No foundation preserves it, no building bears it, no scholarship perpetuates it. Just obituary and auction catalogue. That's what remains. But here's what Eleanor understood that her mother and sisters didn't. The inheritance isn't the fortune. It's the obligation that comes with it. CW. Post-built postum cereal. Obligation grow the business. Marjorie inherited, expanded to General Foods, built Mar-a-Lago, Hillwood, Camp Topridge. Obligation maintain estates, host society, be wealthiest woman in America, perform noblesse oblige, use wealth visibly for public good, justify fortune through charity and culture. Adelaide inherited stewardship, obligation manage Hillwood Museum until death, preserve mother's vision, maintain institutional legacy. Dina inherited visibility, obligation perform dynasty for public, be available for photographers, maintain post name in American consciousness, represent family in public sphere. Eleanor inherited the option to refuse and took it. She understood the only way to escape obligation is to walk away entirely. You can't half refuse an inheritance. Can't take the money but reject the duty. Can't maintain American residence while building separate identity. Can't visit occasionally and claim independence. Geography had to be absolute. Refusal had to be total. Separation had to be complete. She chose Paris. Chose small apartment over 126-room palace. Chose private collection over public museum. Chose 52 years of invisibility over one lifetime of visibility. Chose erasure over permanence. Was she right? The apartment remained empty 12 years after her death, Antal keeping it frozen until 2015. Then Letitia keeping it frozen until 2018. As if waiting for owner who'd never return. Because Eleanor had already found home. Not in Greenwich Mansion where she was born. Not in Mar-a-Lago Palace she was offered. Not in any of 6 husbands' houses she briefly inhabited. But in Paris apartment she chose. Filled with objects she selected. Arranged exactly as she wanted. This was home. The only one that mattered. She died November 27th, 2006, age 96. In that space. Not in American hospital. Not in Palm Beach estate. In Paris. In the life she built by refusing the one she inherited. The final image. 53 Rue de Monceau. December 2018. Sotheby's trucks loading final pieces. The mansion Eleanor chose as her identity's physical anchor, now emptied. About to receive new owners who won't know who she was. Won't know the apartment refused to empty for 12 years. Won't know why. The daughter who disappeared found what she sought. Life on her own terms. The cost-complete erasure from institutional memory wasn't cost at all. It was confirmation. Proof she succeeded. She vanished so completely she proved the inheritance wasn't destiny. Proved you can refuse what you're born into. Proved geography can create identity. Proved distance can be freedom. She disappeared on purpose, and the disappearance worked.